Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson, so thankful you've joined us today. You can always find us at goodlifetelevision.org. Some great interviews, some great power clips, a lot of great content there. It's inspirational. It can be really encouraging, empowering, different people from different walks of life, and all great stories, true stories. And some of them are difficult ones of overcoming, of challenges that people have faced with bravery and a great spirit. So we think that you'll really enjoy goodlifetelevision.org. A lot of you are visiting, which we're so grateful for, from all over the world. So welcome, and we're so glad you're with us. I'm so excited about my guests today. Douglas and Spencer Doman are with me. Welcome, gentlemen. Douglas is the president and Spencer the CEO of Doman International. DOMAN, domaninternational.org is the website where you can find them. It's a nonprofit organization that helps families with a special needs child. These folks, starting with Douglas's father, Glenn Doman, have been working with special needs children and well children for 65 years. Professionally, Douglas has been doing it for 45 years and Spencer for 15, but this goes back literally decades. So it's not arguable that Glenn Doman is a pioneer in the area of the brain, in the area of treating brain injury, and in the area of what's possible with the human brain. Glenn Doman was a pioneer, and these two, taking it now to the third generation, have continued the work really admirably. And it's incredible the impact they've had on children from around the world. They come from all over the world to see the Domans, and they get help. In this particular show, what we're going to talk about is well children, children that don't have a mild, moderate, or profound brain injury. But the Domans have been working with well children also for many, many, many years. They have a website called domanlearning.com where you can go and you can find out about it. But the essence of it is what they've learned about the brain from helping families with brain injured children. They've realized this can also help the well child. And so parents that have a newborn baby, a young child, to teach them what's possible with that child and how to achieve it practically. You guys build programs for these folks to tell them what to do. And it's not just a reading program or something related to academics, but it incorporates everything. It's a holistic approach with nutrition, with physical fitness, with all sorts of things. So I really want to get into your work with well children, and I thought we would start with the newborn brain, talking about the brain of a newborn child, and the possibilities. Could you just kind of talk, generally speaking, about that?
Well, I'll let Spencer talk about that, but I want to start by saying arguably the most important job, responsibility that we have in our lives is being a parent. And yet we're never trained for the most important responsibility and job we're going to have our entire life. And how well we do that job determines often the success of the next generation. Right. So what we've concentrated on is teaching parents, empowering parents as to how they can develop the brains of their children right from the very first days of life, so that their children have the best chance of succeeding in life from an intellectual standpoint, from a physical standpoint, from a social standpoint, and from a physiological, health and nutritional standpoint. And so we've been doing this for a long time, and we're very proud that our parents are the best parents in the world.
That's wonderful. Talk about the brain, the newborn brain, the first 6 years maybe.
Yeah, so the first 6 years of life are the most important years for brain growth and development. And it's kind of funny that we send kids to first grade at 6 years of age when a lot of the most important brain development has already occurred. So during those first 6 years, the neurons, the brain cells, are making connections with one another. And so it's during this period that kids are able to take in information during those first years of life at an incredible rate, and that rate will never be replicated again in a person's lifetime. And the best example of this is that the fact that kids are linguistic geniuses, right? If I were to travel to China, right, tomorrow, and I brought an 18-month-old kid with me, if you checked back in with us 2 years later, that child, now 3 years old, would speak Chinese better than me, right? The child would have a better accent, right? They'd speak it with the correct accent of the location where we were. I'd speak in a very bad, broken, Chinese. And by the way, I would try to learn the language. I'd work very hard at studying it, and the 3-year-old wouldn't even have to try. He'd just absorb it from the environment. And so we as adults, we see this every day. It's a miracle, that a baby, in the first years of life, learns the languages of their environment. If a child's in a household with 2 languages, they'll learn 2 languages. If they're in a household with 3 languages, they'll learn all 3. And we kind of observe this miracle, everyday miracle, and we say, well, that's just the way kids are. But it's an amazing thing. And so what we do with the Doman method is we teach parents how, what are the best activities to do with a child in those first 6 years so we can maximize their brain development. And if we can do that, it will make all kinds of differences for that kid later on.
So to summarize, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but you can teach a young dog new tricks, in essence.
Well, yeah, in a sense, you're right. Now, fortunately, neuroplasticity, which is our brain's ability to change, it does stay with us throughout our lifetimes, but it's a lot easier in the first 6 years of life than later on.
That is so profound. I mean, and so parents with a well child that's, let's say, newborn, I mean, just really young, what would be an example of kind of that program of what the parent can begin to do as the child gets to 1 and 2 and 3 to maximize their success later on in life?
Well, I think if we could only do one thing with a child, it would be teach the child to read at a young age. That would be, there are many things that we recommend to parents, but if we could give the child the gift of literacy before they go to school, that would be number one.
And the love of reading. I mean, an important part of our program is for the parents to teach the children a love of learning, which then they can maintain their entire life. And sadly, sometimes our school system destroys that love of learning. I remember when we were it was in middle school that we knew that I think it was 7th or 8th grade, we were going to be able to study French. Wow, we're going to be able to learn to speak French. And so, we finally started French, and then we had our first year of it and our second year of it. And as soon as we could drop French, we dropped French. And to this day, I don't think I could order a glass of water in a French restaurant. So, I mean, it's sad that love of, clearly the whole class was that way. There were a couple of kids that did okay and wanted to continue to learn French, but most of us, when
are you saying the way it was taught?
Right. It was too late. I mean, for one.
It was too late.
I mean,
and the way it was taught. Yeah, I remember that was one thing. Another thing I remember we're a parent. I'm a dad of a special needs child, in addition to 4 well children who've all benefited from this program. I'll tell you that our well children benefited because of the special needs child. So our well children got the advantage. And so we started showing these word cards we were just talking in there about our youngest, Luke, who, was 1, and we're doing these word cards: elephant, orange, apple, and we're going, and he's getting he's a genius. I mean, he's our IT guy in our house. He's like 12. I mean, he's literally, and I don't think it's an accident. I mean, it works. And so
I saw his physical program there, and I was intimidated by it. Whoa.
Right, he's lifting weights too, yeah. But yeah, I mean, so our kids have benefited. So when I talk to them about my experience, and you'll know, we have a special needs child and 4 well children who've been impacted for the good from this. But I remember you guys teaching that it needs to be joyful. The process needs to be joyful. And I remember you saying, just give them enough to wet their whistle, kind of. Leave them wanting more.
Yeah.
Not the alternative.
Stop before they want you to stop.
Stop before they want you to stop, unlike your French class probably.
Yes, exactly.
So that the kids, when you stop the word cards, they're like, oh, I want to do more. Nope, that's all for today. And then they're like, this is a treat. This is like something they want.
They view learning as a dessert. Yeah. Because,
right.
Yeah. And so, yeah, the typical teaching session in the Doman method is about 10 seconds. So a parent is sitting down with the child. They're presenting them materials, right? Teaching materials. And of course, those materials are customized to what the child wants, right? So you were using the example of teaching a child to read using words, maybe of animals, right? So little kids love animals, right? So to say, all right, let's learn some animals, and you're teaching the child, you know, how to read words of different animals. The child is naturally interested in, elephant, fox, giraffe. Right. And so the kid is learning to read, but as a byproduct, they're really learning that learning is fun. And that's something that they'll carry with them forever. They're very often, our kids are like, the kids that grow up on the Doman method, they're like the kids sitting at the front of the class, because they want to be as close as possible to the teacher, because they've learned that learning is fun.
A love of learning. A lifetime love of learning. I mean, my goodness. Could there be a better gift to give your child? I mean, I can't think of one. I mean, that's a beautiful thing.
And, I might stay from a personal standpoint. When my father wrote How to Teach Your Baby to Read, I was 11 years old. I'd already struggled through the first and second grade and, learned to read. So the book wasn't helpful to me. But I met my wife at the institutes as young staff members together. And so when we started our family, we couldn't wait but to take what we had learned in terms of brain growth and development and then teach our own children. So Spencer has the advantage of having grown up on this and have been having taught to read, and I have to say he does have a love of learning, which I very much respect.
Yeah, he's a sharp one. Yeah, I could tell. Yeah, it's a little intimidating. No, but we were just talking about you actually. Donnie and I were just talking about, just your breadth of knowledge. And Susan and I were talking about this last night after dinner. Your breadth of knowledge on different subjects, your ability to speak, good job.
Yeah, it's really a credit to him and my mom, right? Because they did the program with my siblings and I.
And what was it like for you? I mean, how would you characterize it?
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, just like any person, it's hard for me to remember the first couple years of my life, right? So, as I got older, first of all, kids will assume that whatever's going on at home is just the way you live, right? So I just assumed, everyone learns how to read when you're a kid, everyone learns math, at 3. It never occurred to me that what I was experiencing was any different from anyone else. But there's no question that learning at a young age creates a natural curiosity in someone. I've observed it with other kids who have grown up on the program like me. They tend to be very curious, very inquisitive. They want to learn. They're not intimidated by, encountering something new. And that's a really wonderful thing to carry with you.
Yeah,
for your
curiosity.
Life.
And kids who, I think there's a book with this title, but the kids who start ahead, stay ahead. Yeah. And so when you give your kid the gift of getting ahead, it's not just like it helps them in first grade. I mean, this really changes their whole road, right?
Yeah, that book was written by Dr. Neil Harvey,
yes.
who, was on our staff at the institutes, right up until the time he passed at an elderly age.
Okay, that's where I got it. Yeah. So that, really does, it affects all the way through. High school and I think this has been our kids' experience at some level, probably not as much as you, but at some level where they just feel like they feel confident.
Yeah.
They don't feel like they're swimming upstream. They feel like they're swimming downstream. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
It's kind of like the wind at their back because they started ahead. I think that's a dynamic that in another episode with you guys, we were talking about the importance for children's well-being of being successful and not feeling less than. And so on the converse, a reading difficulty, a learning disability can make a child feel stupid or what's wrong with me. On the inverse of that is what we're talking about right now. If they're ahead, their self-esteem, their confidence, their curiosity, all those things are impacted, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think everyone has heard at one time or another that motivation creates success, right? And of course, motivation is really important to be successful. But on the other hand, success creates motivation. And so when a child has that sense of achievement, a real sense of achievement, they are motivated to keep going. And and so if they feel early on, I'm a good reader, I'm good at math, I can learn another language, then they tend to approach every new thing in that way because they're confident that they can learn that too.
Yeah.
And Dean, it was part of my father's philosophy that it is the responsibility of every generation for you and I to arrange for our children to stand on our shoulders, and then for our children to stand, for our grandchildren to stand on their shoulders.
Right.
And now that we know about brain growth and development, it means that every generation can be empowered to improve for the next generation to be better than us, to be smarter and more compassionate, more loving, more spiritual, that you and I are, and to keep that going. And for the child that is going to end up solving the problem of cancer, or how to make our immune system so strong that no virus dares to enter our bodies. Those kids are out there.
Right. Or some pandemic.
Those girls and boys are out there, and so, to the extent that we can make them more intelligent and more capable, the chances of maybe saving us someday, will be there.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. Doman Learning. So this is a separate entity from Doman International. So Doman International, like I said, is focused on special needs, brain injuries in children, and how to help those children. And that's a wonderful thing. And you can go to domaninternational.org to find out all about that if you have a special needs child. But on the well child kind of side, talk about some of the particulars. For example, the reading course, or the newest program that you've created that your dad was raving about in terms of reading. Talk about that.
Yeah, so we started Doman Learning as a family. So my 3 siblings and I, along with my parents, because we felt that every child in the world should have the same benefits of the program that we got. And so the first course that we released is called Reading Before School, teaching your child to read with the Doman method before age 6. And so in that course, I teach parents the step-by-step practical approach to teaching your kid at home to read.
Yeah.
There's a pathway to teaching a kid how to read. And so we bring parents through that pathway, and we also supply the parents with the materials that they need to teach a kid to read. And I think for a lot of parents, this idea of teaching a child to read at a young age is maybe a new idea, right? And like some parents may never even consider that. And I think it's unfortunate. The world thinks of reading as an academic subject. They think, reading is something that you do when you get to school. Reading is actually a brain function. And so just like how a child can learn to understand language when they're a baby, they can also learn how to read language. So there's an area of our brain called the visual word form area, and it's there so we can read and recognize words, and that is developed at birth. So they've done functional MRI imaging, right? The latest brain science shows that that area of the brain is developed and ready to learn how to read.
Well, let's say that again, because
Yeah.
you just said a lot.
Yeah,
Reading is not an academic subject to be learned. It's a brain function.
it's a brain function.
And if I can just say that the simplicity of it is, we all expect that we're going to speak to our babies and they're going to understand. And by 3 years of age, the average child understands thousands of words of language. By the age of 6, the average child basically has the basic vocabulary of whatever languages they have learned in home. We're simply talking to them. The information is going into the brain through the auditory pathway. It's being stored, and everybody expects that. The exact same thing is possible for the visual pathway. And to expect a 3-year-old to understand 2,000 words through his ears, he can also understand 2,000 words through his eyes. And by the age of 6, the child can be reading not like a first grader, but children have the capability of reading like a third grader at 6, or like a 9th grader. I mean, how advanced have you seen a 6-year-old in terms of his reading?
Oh yeah, I've seen 6-year-olds read at 6th grade levels. Yeah. So like my dad is saying, right, understanding language or speech is understanding language through the auditory pathway, and then reading is understanding language through the visual pathway. And it's funny, we have this myth in our society that a child isn't ready to learn how to read until age 6. And for us, that would almost be the equivalent of, imagine if I said to you, Dean, you have a new child, a baby, but don't speak to that child before age 6 because their immature brain isn't ready to learn to understand speech. Wait until 6. You would say that's crazy. Not just that's crazy, that's evil, right? But for the brain, reading language and understanding it is exactly the same.
It's the same.
And so we've developed a societal myth around reading that you have to be 6 and at school to learn how to read, and it's just not true.
Staggering. Wow. Your father thought every child has the potential to be a genius, didn't he?
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, was that a revolutionary thought? I mean, at the time, and we're talking about the 1950s, I mean, where was the world on this? I mean, I know he was revolutionary on the special needs side, what's possible, and not giving up hope and all that. But in terms of the well child and what was possible, and when you're looking at that little newborn, you're looking at it could be the next Einstein. It could be the next, that the sky's the limit. I mean, there's unlimited potential. I mean, where was your father ahead of the game in terms of seeing this?
Well, it's about viewpoint, and people hear that. Every child has the potential to be a genius. And some people are kind of scared of that idea. But my father's idea was every child has that potential. Not that your kid is going to end up better than my kid. That all of our kids have the potential to do that. And then that ties into what I said in the beginning of us, every generation improving the human ability.
And unfortunately, and this still exists. I mean, it was this way in the 1950s, and it's this way now. I think many people still think that intelligence is just purely genetic. That, if you're smart, it's because your parents were smart. And if someone's not smart, it's because their parents weren't smart. And, what our experience has told us is no. It's,
and neuroscience. I mean,
and decades of neuroscience done on, brain research has shown that our brain, especially during the first years of life, is greatly impacted by the environment that we're raised in. For example, just based on they've looked at kids and the vocabulary that their parents use. And even by 18 months of age, based on the vocabulary that parents use, like the number of words used at home, the child's speech development is impacted. They'll have a larger vocabulary or a smaller vocabulary. But that's not because of genetics. You could take one child, if you wanted to do an evil experiment, you could switch those children, and it's a product of what they're getting from the environment. And so if they're being taught to read in the environment, they'll learn how to read. If there are 3 languages in the environment, they'll learn those 3 languages. It just has to do with how much stimulation and opportunity they're being given at home.
And as an international organization, we have children from all over the world. Every ethnic group, every religion, we have them all, and they're all the same. They all have this potential.
So let's just finish actually on the practical level, just because I want people to be able to access this. So parents that want to learn what to do with their child, would you start them with one of your books, or would you have them go straight to one of your online courses, or what's the best way?
Yeah, so I think both things. So I'd recommend a parent goes to domanlearning.com and that they look at our online course, Reading Before School, teaching a child to read with the Doman method before age 6.
It's a very easy, fun course, and it's boom, boom.
It is, yeah. It's 10-minute classes. My siblings and I really tried to make it so it was perfect for the busy parent who just wants to learn how to use the program. And so, I would recommend that course. I'd also recommend my grandfather, Glenn Doman's books, the book How to Teach Your Baby to Read, How to Teach Your Baby Math. He had a whole, my father wrote a book, Fit Baby, Smart Baby, Your Baby, which is all about physical development. So I'd recommend all the books, but I'd also recommend the Reading Before School.
And I'll mention his book, How to Teach Your Baby to Swim.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Stay afloat.
Here we are in California.
We're in California. You got the ocean. Yeah, so that's another one. Douglas wrote the book, How to Teach Your Baby to Swim, and I'd also recommend. But we're going to make another point?
Well, along with the course, you get all of the reading materials for the first 6 months. And so and your wife knows all the time and the effort that goes into making those words. It's all done for you.
I don't know how many word cards I wrote.
Yeah.
And I had to keep my handwriting perfect, because you said it has to be perfect. And I'm writing elephant in big red marker. And we did hundreds of
I wish.
So you're saying people could buy them now?
Yeah, I wish we had this course for you 17 years
thanks
ago.
a lot.
Because now they can just print them out at home,
Yeah.
And it ends up in 6 months that the children are reading homemade books, which is a pretty great result for 6 months.
Thank you, guys. This is inspiring. DomanLearning.com. On the special needs side, DomanInternational.org. Appreciate you coming. We'll see you next time.